We're going to go ahead and move forward then. And first of all, I want to thank everybody that was here. We've got two people that are not here yet. David Karpus is not here, and Jeff Hurd was invited but wasn't able to make it. We're going to do some opening statements. First of all, it's 90 seconds. And Nova Tucker is going to read something from Jeff Hurd, correct? Okay. We did a drawing before this, and Stephen is going to be the first one that does the opening statement. And then we're going to go clockwise, and we're going to do the same thing for questions, so each question will be answered first by a different person. While we're going through this, if you're wanting to ask other questions, in the back there's a box and there's some notepad, there's some little cards, and you can write the questions down, and they will kind of sort through, and then we'll just randomly pick them. And I think that Tom is going to go ahead and read those because they might have big words in it, and I don't want that challenge. So we'll get going here in just a moment. There's a restroom if anybody needs it down the hall and then to the right. But we thank everybody for coming, and we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll start with, do you have a microphone? So we'll go ahead and start with Stephen. So the rules for this are 90 seconds for their opening statement, 90 seconds to answer each question, and then they'll have 3 minutes to do a closing statement. We've got a timer here that she's going to hold a green card, and when they have 30 seconds left, she's going to let them know with the yellow card, and then hold up the red card. And so what I've asked is that we adhere to that, because it's not fair if somebody goes over and other people are following the rules. So that's really how we're going to move forward. So Stephen, would you like to go? Stephen Varela. Now you see why Tom's going to read the other questions.
Well, thank you guys for being here tonight, and thank you guys for allowing me to be a part of this. I'm very excited to participate in this congressional race. I'm a husband, a father, and a veteran. When I came back from my second tour in Operation Iraq Freedom, I knew that freedom wasn't free, and I had to continue fighting for it. And one of the things that was most important for me was for my children, to show them that me growing, that what I am, the man I am, and what I'm fighting for is something they could grow into. Right now, what we have going on in our country is scary. We're being robbed of our prosperity, our economic development, and our community reinvestment. And we're seeing it in the schools. Our children right now are being robbed of those same things. And what we're seeing is that kids aren't learning about our government and how important it is, because they're confused to believe that we're a democracy. We're not a democracy, we are a republic. And it's time that we start fighting for that again. And I want to be the champion for Congressional District 3 to start fighting for those values that made every single one of us come here tonight to protect our freedoms. And that's why it's so important for me to be here tonight to show you and talk to you about what I'm going to do for you, and why it's important to be a Republican, and why it's important to fight for this. I was once a Democrat. It's very important that you know that. And I had a lady come up to me one day and ask me if I was woke. And I said, yes, I am woke. I went to bed a Democrat and woke up a Republican. But it's time that we fight for our values of less government, lower taxes, and more individual freedoms, because that is why we are conservative and generational wealth. I'm Stephen Varela, and I heard more from you tonight.
Good job, Steve. So folks, I'm Russ Andrews. I'm a conservative business owner from the Roaring Fork Valley. I've had a political and financial radio talk show there for 15 years. I have a degree in marine engineering, which doesn't do much up here in the mountains. I've been a financial advisor for a long time. My wife, Lori, and I moved to the Western Slope 30 years ago. We never looked back. We came from the Philadelphia area. We raised our 3 kids here. And something you need to know about my 3 children is they all know how to reload their own ammunition. And I promise you tonight that when you send me to Congress, I will never vote to abrogate our Second Amendment rights, ever. That's an applause line. My top 3 issues, I make almost 1,000 phone call dials a week, and I talk to delegates, and I talk to just regular voters. The top 3 issues that I run into, it's always immigration. That's 95% of the time. I have a 7-point plan on immigration. The economy as a financial advisor is also really important to me. And I just mentioned it, the Second Amendment. I am an engineer. Engineers use facts and math and logic to solve problems. There are currently 9 engineers in all of Congress. Not to worry though, if Jeff were here tonight, but he blew us off. If Jeff were here tonight, I would remind him that there are 175 lawyers in Congress, and sending the 176 lawyer to Congress isn't going to do a darn thing for the Western Slope. So I'm asking you tonight to send this engineer to Congress. Thank you.
Thank you. So now, Joe Granado.
Hello. Well, thank you.
There should be a power switch.
So we have test 2 during this.
Yes. Test. Hopefully it's on now. Well, thank you for allowing me to be here. My name is Joe Granado. I've been in Colorado approximately 20 years in the Lauren Boebert Valley. I'm currently in Fruta, and I am a pro-life Republican, small government Republican. Thank you. Got the little button here that my dad got, let's say 60 some years ago. I like Ike. That, how we talk about, we'd like to go back to the past when things were so much better. Well, I don't know if they were or they were not, but I was a kid and they were pretty darn good for me. So that's why I wear this. That's a reflection of my political philosophy. Small government. President Eisenhower did warn us about the military-industrial complex, and we've all heard about those outrageous $700 toilets, $800 coffee pots, all that government waste. That is one of my big concerns. And I got into this, I actually started my paperwork officially last July, after the election ended in November. To me, it was obvious that if Ms. Boebert, as nice a lady as she is, if she were to be our candidate, she would lose. And obviously she made that determination herself. That's one of the reasons I got into this race. And hopefully we have good candidates here. But I decided I'd go ahead and follow through with it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here, and thank you for being here. I think it's important for us as Americans today to get involved and become informed with who we vote for. My name is Curtis McCracken. I'm from Cedar Ridge, Colorado. I've been there 21 years. My wife and I, Laura, moved there to raise our children. We have 2 adult children. I've been a registered Republican for 43 years, and I'm in this race because I believe that the money spent in this country today does not often meet the authority of the Constitution. I believe that our Constitution basically says Congress can spend our money for 3 ways. They can provide a common defense, they can provide for the general welfare of the nation, and they can pay the debts of the country. If you look at things like the American Rescue Plan Act, that was $1.9 trillion. None of it had the authority from the Constitution to be spent like that. And so I believe that we have to take that back. I believe that we have the privilege and the responsibility to hire, fire, and retire our leaders, and I think we need to do a better job of that. Thank you. So, yeah, that's why I'm in this race. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. Thank you to Stand for the Constitution for having us here. I'm Ron Hanks. I represented House District 60 in the State House. I've been a 32-year military veteran, active and reserve, enlisted and commissioned. I ran for U.S. Senate in 2022. I did not expect to be doing this, but when Lauren Boebert shifted her position to CD4, I started getting calls from people who are in the fight right now, asking and saying, Hanks, you won CD3 when you ran for U.S. Senate. You're the only one with elected experience, legislative experience. Would you please look at getting in the race? When I joined the service, Ronald Reagan was my first commander-in-chief. When I retired at the end of 2017, Donald J. Trump was my commander-in-chief. That's a pretty good set of bookends with a couple of miserable presidents in between. But Donald J. Trump does not have to be in this fight right now. He could be off doing whatever he wants to do. When I got an ask from people who are in the fight, how can I say no? I've lived my whole life fighting for what I believed our country was. I don't believe it's in that mode anymore with Joe Biden as president. We have constitutional crises on the horizon. The border is a disaster. I went there 2 weeks ago. Please look at hanksforcolorado.com. I've done a report on my visit there. It's my 3rd visit. Thank you.
This is Nova Tucker on Last Bedford.
Hello everyone, most of you know me. So I've decided that I am supporting Jeff Hurd for CD3. He's already committed this evening to a veterans event over in Pueblo, Colorado, and that's why he was not able to make it. He believes that the urban divide is crushing our district and it feels like our best export has become our children. They grow up, they leave home to find careers and raise their families somewhere else. Jeff wants to change that. He wants to create opportunities so that our kids and grandkids can have opportunities, encouraging them to stay here on the Western Slope. Jobs that let them afford a home, be part of their communities, and make a decent living. I truly believe with good leadership, we can have him help us get this accomplished. We must secure our border. The federal government's job is to protect our national security, protect our economic security, and uphold the law. We must also remove the anti-business and anti-energy policies standing in the way of good jobs, low-cost energy, and an economy that thrives for us. Finally, we need smart policies that protect Colorado's water and the livelihoods of the farmers and ranchers who put food on our tables. Jeff is a candidate who can do this because he knows our district. He grew up here in the valley. He went to Grand Junction High School, graduated here. He brought his family back here to raise them. Many lawyers are good at creating problems. Jeff is good at solving them. Jeff is a different kind of fighter. He fights smart. And that's how he will fight for Western and Southern Colorado in Congress. Not flashy, not loud, but smart. And he will fight to win for us. Thank you.
So that concludes our opening statements, and so they've given me 6 questions to read. And so Russ, you get the first one, and this is kind of a 2-part one. They didn't take into account I went to school in Loma, so they have lots of words in here, so we'll work through this. So the first question is on the legislative priorities. What specific legislative priorities will you champion in Congress to address the needs and concerns of the constituents in Colorado's 3rd Congressional District, and how do you plan to work across party lines to advance these priorities?
Great. Is this not? Yes? All right, great. My very first plank, 28 planks I have on my platform, has me reaching across the aisle, has my staff, contacting the staffs of all the other 434 congresspeople and all 100 senators to set up 10 to 20 minute meetings to find out if we have some common ground that we might be able to co-sponsor legislation with each other. My top priority is immigration. I told you I make 1,000 or so cold calls a week. I would say, again, 95% of people talking about immigration. I have a 7-point plan for that. I might not get through the whole thing, but the first point is to build Donald Trump's wall. That's my first one. The second one has to do with the predators. They're killing 110,000 American kids of military age every year. Those predators are drug dealers. I say that we need to feed them to our newfound wolves, but essentially get out the harshest penalties possible to them. The third and meat and potatoes point is tariffs, national security tariffs. I would start with 50% tariffs on Mexico and China. We know that the chemicals to make this stuff comes from China and that it is manufactured in Mexico and delivered across the border. I would put 50% tariffs on both countries. except I would exempt food or produce from Mexico, and those would escalate up to as much as 800% after the first year. The fourth point, and I'll have to get to the last three in a moment, or next time around. The fourth point is I would I would triple legal immigration from 1.1 million to 3 million a year, 3.3 million, and I'll talk to you about that in a moment.
So actually, Joe is going to be the next person. I think he's got his own mic.
Oh, yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Go ahead, Joe.
What was that question?
90 seconds. Oh, do you want me to read the question again?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll get better each time I do it, maybe. What specific legislative priorities will you champion in Congress to address the needs and concerns of the constituents in Colorado's 3rd Congressional District? And how do you plan to work across party lines to advance these priorities?
Well, obviously the major issue that we're having right now, and by the way, is my microphone on? Okay, thank you. Immigration. We had the opportunity to do something about that last week.
There you go.
But our Republican Party chose to just punt that. I'm very disappointed at that. I think they should have done something with it. For political reasons, they chose to just go ahead and disregard something that the Senate had produced that, in my opinion, it was a good bill. It was much better than anything we've had previously. So that's one of my main issues right there is immigration. Fix that, finish building the wall, and then give Mexico the bill. Weren't they supposed to pay for it? So those are some of the issues that I think we should move forward with.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, I think on the campaign trail, I tell people I'm about the money. And so I'm going to talk about that first. And I don't disagree with the immigration or build the wall policies that you guys have. I think that's paramount. If one of these guys up here on this stage takes $200 from you, he has to report to the FEC your name, your address, your employer, and your position at that employer. If you give money to a PAC, you can give hundreds of millions of dollars to a PAC and there is zero disclosure. I think the first thing that needs to be fixed in the election process is that all monies that are given to influence an election in this country should have to be disclosed, period. The second thing that I want to fight for is a balanced budget. I think if we don't stop spending more money than we make, we're done. And we may already be there. I don't know how you're ever going to pay back $34 trillion. I was just meeting with some friends of mine and talking about this issue, and one of the things that one of them said to me, and this is a man who's done well in his life. He said, "Curtis, I think inflation is the only thing that's going to take care of it." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Inflation reduces the debt's value." And I thought, what a sorry state we are in if that's our plan. And so I think what I don't hear from, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, could I ask for one more time, the question one more time, just to be clear on it?
What specific legislative priorities will you champion in Congress to address the needs and concerns of the constituents in Colorado's 3rd Congressional District, and how do you plan to work across party lines to advance those priorities?
What we need is a House majority that does not need to reach across the aisle. We have had nothing but problems reaching across the aisle. What we need is a Speaker of the House who is conservative and does not sandbag President Trump. President Trump will be our president, assuming he will have such an election majority. Even Truman Democrats and Ike Republicans are going to be voting for him. He needs a House of Representatives that works with him. We need no legislation to fix this border issue. We have everything we need right now. What we need to do is not release on parole 85% of the people coming to the border. In my opinion, we should be only processing people into this country that are going through embassies and consulates. When I worked in Kazakhstan doing counter-drug missions, I would walk into the embassy and it was loaded with people who were doing it the right way. We need to start rounding up people, telling them that they need to suspend their case and return voluntarily to their countries. Border is number one. Energy, in my opinion, is number two. American manufacturing is number three. American agriculture is national security. All of those need to be addressed. It needs to be addressed by a conservative Congress that pushes things and then audits the Fed and audits every department. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yes. Are we supposed to stand up?
It's completely up to you.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that's very important to me that we need to work on right away is we need to tell the federal government to leave our natural resources alone, stay out of our backyard, protect our water, protect our agriculture. Because right now there's so many in-state land grabs that are happening that we're not even aware of them, and we need to start paying attention because it's going to hurt our industry. The other thing is we need to protect jobs. We need to put America first. We have too often gave so many jobs over to China, to South America, to Mexico. We need to bring jobs back to America and build an industry that matters. And it's our industry that we have oversight over, that we are benefiting and profiting off of. The other problem we have right now is the border. That border is wide open. We have the cartels that are making money and profit off of trafficking people up here. They want to talk about humaneness. It is inhumane to send somebody into our country who doesn't speak our language, have somewhere to live, have housing. Those things need to stop right away, and we need to start paying attention to it. It is more important today than ever that we start protecting our country and start focusing on making America great and making America first. We have to focus on us, and that is a problem that right now no one in Congress is doing. If we want to talk about working across the aisle, like Ron Haynes said, there is a problem up there. Nobody wants to work with each other. We need to start working with each other before we can cross that aisle. We have too many divisions within our own party that are destroying us. If we're not careful, the other side is going to take over, and we need to start winning again.
Thank you, Susan. So the next question is on the federal budget and fiscal responsibility. And Joe, you'll be the first one to get this one. So the question is, how do you propose to balance the federal budget and address the national debt while ensuring that essential services and programs important to the constituents of the 3rd Congressional District are adequately funded?
Would you repeat that question? I'm sorry,
I will.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
It's hard for us to hear you because the sound's going out.
Okay. It's usually people like it when they can't hear me, so. So the question is, how do you propose to balance the federal budget and address the national debt while ensuring that essential services and programs important to the constituents of the 3rd Congressional District are adequately funded?
Well, to be truthful, I don't think anybody's really interested in balancing the budget. We've had the majority in Congress. They have done nothing in that direction. Realistically, I don't know if that's anything that can be done in the near future. We've had, obviously, these tax reductions that has helped to increase our deficit. So I'll be honest, right there, I'm at a loss. How we're going to do it? We're continuously spending. We're proposing tax cuts, which that's what pays the bills. Taxes pays the bills. I'm opposed to increased taxes, but I'll look to people that have a better solution. I'll look to others for suggestions, and I'll work from there.
Thank you, Joe. Curtis?
Well, I think a balanced budget is probably one of the most important things that we face today, because we can no longer continue to spend more than we make. Most of you have heard of a guy named Paul Rand, who is a Kentucky senator, and every year at the end of the year, he puts out his, and I don't know what he calls it, it's America's Gluttony. And this year it was $900 billion of things that he saw that we didn't need. So to begin with, we can do away with the needless things that we spend our money on. I think we also need a task force to tackle the fraud in our federal government. I think there's a tremendous amount of that throughout our government that could be dealt with. I think the third thing that we need to do is stop doing what we did with the American Rescue Plan Act. Stop sending legislation through that are these big spending bills that don't filter through the Constitution. You can't just decide that, okay, I'm the president, so this is the way we're going to spend our treasury. You can't forgive student loan debt. It doesn't meet the qualifications of the Constitution. You just cannot continue to spend money on things that don't filter through the lens of the Constitution. So if it doesn't pay the debt of the country, if it doesn't provide for a common defense, and if it doesn't provide for the general welfare of the nation, you don't get it, period.
We don't have, I'm going to check this, we don't have a federal budget to balance. The federal government hasn't been operating with a budget for decades now. They've been using continuing resolutions and just pumping money through without any real oversight. So the first thing we need to do is stop doing continuing resolutions. We need to audit the Fed. We need to audit, thank you. We need to audit every executive department. I want to work with Donald Trump. I want to get him a solid majority in the House. But while we're working with him, we are the spending oversight for every executive branch department. There are 15 of them. I would immediately look to eliminate Department of Education, Department of Energy. I would seriously consider getting rid of Housing and Urban Development. That's a Lyndon Johnson. I would put Department of Labor back under Department of Commerce. I would put Department of Transportation under Commerce and Labor and Transportation. So we're at, from 15, we are now down to 11 or 10. Let's start debating some of the other ones. No omnibus spending bills where all departments are funded. No continuing resolutions, audit the Fed, and the government does not need this much money. The people need their money back to invest in what they need for their families' education. Thank you.
Right away, the first thing we need to do is stop writing blank checks to foreign countries. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. The most important thing that we need to focus on is we need to start auditing every single department and find out where the fraud, the waste, the abuse is. It has been too much that is going on in this country to where we don't even know what it's being spent on. It's being overspent. We need to start paying attention as an American people and seeing what's happening. The first thing we can do is by eliminating a lot of these departments and getting rid of the bureaucrats in DC. That is the biggest problem right now with our country. All those bureaucrats, they keep growing government. Stop growing government. We need to tell our Republican counterparts, stop growing government. Less government, lower taxes, and more individual freedoms. We need to get back to our values as Republicans. That's the first thing we need to do. Thank you.
I've been a financial advisor for 36 years, so I understand economics. 72 cents of every dollar the federal government spends is simple redistribution of income. The federal budget has increased 55% since 2019, while the population has increased in size by 5%. That's ridiculous. So Ron touched on it. I would eliminate what I call the Rick Perry agencies. If you remember, Rick was debating and he forgot them. Department of Indoctrination, Education, Department of Energy, and I would seriously cut back Department of Agriculture, which is really the Department of Food Stamps. I would also cut back welfare spending by 2% per year for 5 years. We do all that, we save $500 billion a year. It could be used to cut the deficit, could be used to shore up Social Security and Medicare, it could go towards military spending. So that's what I would do. Just to circle back on the immigration thing, I said build a wall, feed the drug dealers to the wolves, install massive national security tariffs. I would also triple legal immigration. Let's bring in nurses and doctors, no lawyers, sorry Jeff, and carpenters and truck drivers, people who can immediately help us. The fifth point that I would do is end the asylum laws. Obviously, these people need to start applying for asylum in somebody else's country and not at our border. The sixth thing is defund sanctuary cities. If a city or municipality is going to flout federal laws, thank you. They should forfeit all federal dollars. And finally, this has been a middle finger to middle America from the Biden administration. I say we round up all 14 million people he's let in and send them back.
Thank you. And were you able to hear the last time? When I'm saying that, they're usually hear me. Okay. So the next question is on national security and defense. And the question will go to Curtis. What steps will you take to strengthen national security and ensure the safety of Americans, while also considering the impact of defense spending and military deployment on the residents of the Colorado's 3rd Congressional District?
Well, I think, again, you don't have a country if you can't provide a common defense, and that is one of the places where our Constitution gives Congress the authority to spend money. I think it's very important. I think we talked a lot about the border tonight. I think the border should have been closed long ago until we solved this problem internally within our Congress. And so I think you have to start there. I think we don't have a national defense if we can't defend our own border. And so I think that's imperative. I think the other thing that we have to do is we have to look hard at our military and try and decide what does the future look like for our military? Are we going to be fighting wars on the ground? Are we going to be fighting wars in the air? We're also going to be fighting wars with the computer. And so I think there's a lot that has to be thought through with our military spending. We spend about 4 times more on our military per budget than any nation in the world. But it's also the reason that we're one of the safest nations in the world, and the reason that we are a world power. And so I think national defense is it's a very important part of our budget, and I do believe that we have the authority to spend money, and I think that we should.
Thank you, David. Lauren?
I've spent my entire adult life working in the military, working national defense. To say I am pro-military and pro-defense is a bit of an understatement. I was a military intelligence officer. I've worked in all aspects of national security and briefing. Our border is our #1 problem. I want to tell you that right now, all of those people coming from starting in Ecuador, coming through Darien Gap, coming up through being funded and transported by non-governmental organizations are our biggest threat. But the ones coming in now are mere reinforcements for the tens of thousands of enemy operatives that are already here. I'm talking Al-Qaeda, I'm talking Hamas, I'm talking Hezbollah, I'm talking the People's Liberation Army special agents. They're already here. Joe Biden, in his demented state and as an agent of a foreign power, has set us up for a civil war and a 9/11. And 9/11 is going to look a little different to me, in my opinion, based off of my assessments. Yeah, sure, the Super Bowl's a big target. But remember the DC sniper? Just 2 guys made it tough to go get gas, made it tough to go get food. Multiply that by 100. Think of tire jacks, little spikes on the interstates. We'll be shut down. We got a lot of problems right here, right now.
Thank you, Lauren. Peter?
Thank you. National defense is very important to me. I served in the military. I did 2 tours in Operation Iraq Freedom as a scout gunner. I met my wife in the Army jumping out of airplanes. She was a combat medic. Service in my family is very important, but I'm going to tell you something that we should all be aware of in this room. We're not going to have the same military that we have today or yesterday. if we don't make changes, and it starts in education. We are raising men that are afraid to be men. We are feminizing our boys. We have to start fighting to make sure that this next generation of this great country is prepared and ready to fight. The first thing we learn in the military is readiness. I wasn't an officer like Ron. I always joke I was enlisted. I worked for a living. I was in the stuff. I was there. I seen it. And if you weren't there in it, you don't understand how important it is to be ready and know that you could count on the guy next to you or the guy in front of you. And if you right now, what's going on in our country, in our schools, our kids don't even know that we're a republic. Our kids don't even know what it means to be an American. They don't even know what Constitution they're defending. If we are not training that next generation in building strong young men and women to defend this country, we will not have the country that we love today. We have to start fighting back, and it starts in education, and it starts right here. All politics are local. Thank you.
Well, I see you saluting back there. First off, I'd like to thank anybody in the room who served, and I'd like to thank Steve, and Ron Hanks for serving. Thank you very much, guys. I went to a military college to learn how to design and operate mobile and stationary power plants. Then I went to work for the Navy, so I understand the military pretty well too, having not served. We provide cover security for more than 50 nations around the world. So when the Democrats talk about how our military budget is overblown, well, again, 50 different countries we provide the security for. We have the best allies that money can buy. That's a fact. So if you look at NATO, you hear what Trump said over this weekend. Regarding what Steve said about military recruitment, 25% back up 6 years ago, 7% of kids in high school identified as being LGBTQIA, whatever. Today, that's 25%. Our education departments train our kids to hate America and to hate themselves. That needs to end. That's another reason I want to eliminate the departments of energy and education. Our Navy is down to 289 ships. We need 355 ships. We have technicians now going to museums, taking parts from aircraft because they're broke. We can't afford to make the parts anymore. So they go literally and cannibalizing aircraft in museums so that we can get our airplanes running. So something has to change.
Thank you, Jeff. And the question goes to Joe.
Well, the topic he covered right there. Now is this thing on?
It doesn't sound like it.
The Senate this weekend was actually working on a foreign aid bill that allowed $60 billion in military support for Ukraine, $14 billion in military support for Israel.
We can't hear you.
$9 billion for Gaza, $4.8 billion for the Indo-Pacific area. I'll repeat the $60 billion in military support for Ukraine, $14 billion in military support for Israel. Well, we've got the counter argument there. What about America first? We're supporting all these other countries and their military, but that also ties into we're going to be spending all this, so it's kind of hard to be trying to. We've got all this spending that many of us think is necessary, so that makes it kind of hard to reduce our deficit. Now, there are a lot of ways that these guys do have. I'll admit they have good suggestions. I'm here learning as I go along. And my big concern right now will be our national security. It's at the border. It's at the border. There are people from 160 different countries coming in through the border. There are terrorists from all over the world, and that's where they're coming in through. So back to that, I think the border should be secured. That's my number one priority.
Thank you, Kurt. So the next question is for Ron, and this is on immigration reform. What comprehensive reforms do you support regarding immigration policy, including pathways to citizenship, border security measures, and the treatment of undocumented immigrants? And how will these reforms benefit both the nation as a whole and the diverse communities within the district?
I appreciate the question. I just went to the border as my third trip since I retired from the military at the end of 2017. I will tell you, it's horrific. What the Texas National Guard did down there to take back a small park and golf course that's right on the river is significant in the sense of the 10th Amendment, states versus an unresponsive federal government. It's a big deal, but it pushed the migrants upriver and downriver. And please take a look at my website, hanksforcolorado.com. It's got my border report right there. There's pictures in there of kids' shoes, kids' pants, kids' teddy bears. We've got kids coming across this border and we're losing track of them. I mean, this is a disgrace, it's a disaster. I have been told we have more slavery right now in our time of existence than we have ever had in history. Think about that. While we are fighting amongst ourselves about slavery and reparations for a war that we fought as a nation against ourselves, the border's big, and we should probably put more National Guard onto that mission. 25 states have agreed to put people on the border, their National Guard, their skill set, their personnel, their materiel. That's a starting point, and we have to stop the immigration. Stop them and tell them they can't come in anymore. Come through the embassies.
Thank you, Ron. Stephen?
There was a time when we had programs that worked in this country, like the Vasetto program. If any of you guys are aware of it, we brought people here the right way. They came, they worked, they got their residency, they were in agriculture, they developed generational wealth, they went through the process. Our system isn't broke. It's the criminals on the South that are benefiting from the current system we have. It is the Joe Biden administration that is not enforcing the laws. The other problem that we need to start talking about is the northern border. Nobody's talking about that. We have people that are coming in from over there just as much as we do from the South. And if we're going to build comprehensive plans and start focusing on it, we need to work with the residents that are here legally. I have a friend down in Pueblo that's a doctor that was afraid to go home to see his dying dad in India because he wouldn't be able to come back. Can you imagine that? He couldn't come back because he's been here paying taxes, working in this country for 12 years, servicing our community, and still did not have citizenship. I have a lady down in Pueblo that owns a cleaning business. 25 years she has been waiting to become an American citizen. She said, Stephen, she goes, 25 years I've waited, and I called the consulate and they told me it's going to take 2 more years now because they have to process the illegal immigrants. She said, Stephen, they are getting paid $3,000 a month to come here. She said, you know what they told me? I should just go over the border and come over the illegal way. We are creating a system that is encouraging illegal immigration. We have to fix it. We have the right system now.
I'm going to sound like a broken record. I get another bite at the apple here. Again, build the wall. Let's feed the drug dealers who are killing, again, 110,000 American kids of military age every year. Let's feed them to the wolves. Tariffs. Let's start with 50% tariffs and double them every 3 months on every good and service coming out of China and Mexico. Nobody, not even Steve Rowe with all his money, is going to spend $360,000 to buy a $40,000 truck assembled in Mexico. Fourth, again, let's triple legal immigration, bring in doctors, nurses, truck drivers, carpenters, people who can immediately help us. After 40 years, Biden will have spent more on his illegal immigrants than Ronald Reagan's first-year budget. Think about that for a moment. Fifth, end asylum the way that we currently have it. These people should not be allowed to seek asylum at our border. Sixth, defund sanctuary cities. Again, if they're going to file federal laws, they should forfeit all federal dollars. And seven, let's round them all up and send them home. Absolutely. And understand this, folks. This is about votes. I won't bother with the math. but allowing 14 million illegal immigrants in will net out to 2.3 million extra Democrat votes when they're allowed to vote, whenever that's going to be. So that's what this is about. It's about raw power. Thank you.
Thank you, Rex. Joe, the question goes to you. The question goes to you.
Would you repeat the question, please?
I will repeat the question. I'm practicing my reading, but eventually I'll get good. So the question was on immigration reform, and it says, what comprehensive reforms do you support regarding immigration policy, including pathways to citizenship, border security measures, and the treatment of undocumented immigrants? And how will these reforms benefit both the nation as a whole and the diverse communities within the district?
Well, I certainly support humane treatment of whatever immigrants are taken in, but we have to remember that a lot of the farm labor is actually immigrants. Nobody else is taking that work. So obviously that program that allows workers to come in, well, we need to maintain that. So as far as immigration, pretty much it's like, close the damn border. That's my stance right now. And again, I'll bring that up. The Republicans had the opportunity to vote on a bill. They chose not to vote on that bill that would have improved things for political reasons. Now, I think that should be passed, and then when President Trump gets elected, if he wants to improve on it, great, then he can make it a better bill. But we need something now. This bill that they chose not to pass would have cut the numbers by about half. Well,
let's talk.
It was something. If it was a bad bill, then when President Trump comes in, he can improve on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Curtis, it goes to you.
I think that the first thing that has to happen is the rule of law has to be respected. And I think that is probably, if that one thing happened, we could start to fix the problem. You know, the Constitution says that the President of the United States is to protect the states from invasion, and that's not happening. And so if we don't understand that the respect for law has to be our number one priority in immigration, then I don't think we get anywhere. I've been in the construction industry a lot of my life, and I've had the opportunity to labor next to a lot of Latinos who have experienced the cartel in Mexico, and I can tell you that their stories are horrific. And I'm pro-immigration. I just think that we need to do it according to the rule of law, and that's not what's happening in this country.
Thank you, Curtis. So the next question is on healthcare policy, and Stephen, you're going to be the lucky person to get this one. So how do you propose to address the rising costs of healthcare and expand access to affordable healthcare coverage for all Americans, including those residing in rural areas of Colorado's 3rd Congressional District, while also preserving individual choice and quality of care?
Thank you for that question. One of the most important things that we need to understand is corporate entrenchment in America. Right now, the healthcare industry is entrenched with the insurance companies that keep rising the costs. They keep overcharging for medications. They're hurting people in our communities. We have people that are dying because they can't get access to it because corporate entrenchment with what's going on right now. We have to fight back on that. If we're going to have access to healthcare that's meaningful, that makes sense in our area, we have to start educating that next generation of doctors, of medical care. Right now, we don't have any jobs in these rural communities to where it's advantageous for people to move out here. We have to bring industry back. We've seen this down in Pueblo. We were trying to recruit a doctor about 7-8 years ago. And one of the first things that his wife did was she went and looked up the educational system. She's seen our scorecard. And she said, I'm not moving to that rural community. You guys don't have anything. Your education's horrible. I can't live there. We have to start making it more advantageous to families, to engage them, to buy down the cost of healthcare. And as easy as remove the corporate entrenchment right away. But one thing I want to take a quick second too is We have people that are coming over the border that aren't legal, and we are giving them better health care than our veterans. That, we should be embarrassed that that is happening. And we want to talk about election integrity. Let me talk about that, because when they come over here in Colorado, it's an honor system. They can register to vote, and they can flip and change elections. We need to be aware of those problems right away.
Thank you, Peter. Mike?
Thanks, Steve. I have a daughter who's a doctor, so I know quite a bit about healthcare, I think. One of the issues, in 2022, this district brought home back from Washington, D.C., 1.1 billion fewer of our tax dollars than the average district in the state did. And that impacts rural hospitals and outreach to the elderly, and it does it in a deleterious manner. Government regulations kill my daughter. She loves the clinical work, she loves dealing with patients. She hates sitting there at a computer at the end of the day for hours picking out codes. She was showing me that for alcoholism, there's over 1,000 different codes for the very same thing, and it drives these people nuts. So we need to get the government, like with every other aspect of government, we need to get it out of the healthcare industry as much as possible. What else we have? The other issue is we're seeing in medical schools that there's lowering the standards for admission and for graduation. And that doesn't work for me. I don't want pilots on the planes that fly me around. I don't want them having lower standards, and I certainly don't want my doctor to have lower standards. So that's another issue. And then to circle back to the repairing agencies, if we eliminate those agencies and start to cut welfare by 2% per year, at least for people over age 65, we can shore up Medicare. So that's where I'm with that. Oh, one other point. We have a coalition called Doctors for Us, and one of their solutions is to make every procedure that's cost under $2,500 paid for in cash.
Thank you, Bill. Jay, question goes to you.
This is on healthcare?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I know there's not, Third Congressional District is predominantly rural, and there isn't enough healthcare out here, but one of the things is that costs money. So we have to be willing to spend money to obviously build more clinics, and right now we don't have the infrastructure. Sure, I'd like to keep government out of everything right now, but they're the ones that have the money, so they're the ones that we would have to turn to try to improve the healthcare system. And well, we all recall President Trump did say, who knew healthcare was so hard? So I'm here to learn. There's a lot of experts out there that would be able to obviously direct us in what is practical and what would work. So that's, I guess that would be my stance on that.
Thank you, Jay. Curtis?
Oh my gosh, I've been sitting here thinking about this. I've been married to a physician for 26 years. We ran a clinic in Delta, Colorado for 20 years, and I don't even know where to begin. I know more about healthcare than I ever wanted to know, I'll just tell you that. The business of medicine sucks in this country, and I hate to use that word, but it does. In this country, we have a law called Certificate of Need. A Certificate of Need law says that if you want to build a hospital in any place in this country, you have to get a Certificate of Need. And a Certificate of Need is obtained by going to the Certificate of Need Council. Let's pick a place, Grand Junction. Well, the people who sit on the board of the Certificate of Needs are the other hospitals. And so they don't really want competition. And so no is the answer unless there really is, unless you can really prove a burden. It used to be that doctors own clinics, and in the Affordable Care Act, I think it's 6100, it says a doctor may not own a hospital. We have eliminated all competition in medicine, and unless we are willing to change the way we do medicine and allow competition to thrive, we are never going to lower the cost. Competition is the only thing that will lower the cost. Our physicians labor long and hard, and we have turn them into shift workers. You go there at 5 or you go there at 7 in the morning and you get off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When my
What happens when you get to the part you want to say, right? If you take it down?
I guess I yearn for the day when government is not part of our healthcare process. Wasn't there a day when doctors knew their patients? And my dad's from northern Idaho, and he said a lot of them got paid in whiskey or a side of elk or whatever. I'm not saying we go back to that, but I don't think the Department of Health and Human Services is our friend as citizens. I don't think Obamacare is our friend. And I'll tell you, I took a year off of my military career in 2010, to run against Obamacare because Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, and all the experts said it would bankrupt us. Look at what we have with Fauci and the revolving door between the National Institute of Health, the CDCs, Big Pharma. I'll tell you one thing we can do to make things better is, and more secure, it goes back to national security, American manufacturing of pharmaceuticals. Right now, we are getting over 90% of our antibiotics from China. When China decides to flip the switch on us and shut off our grandma's heart medicine, we're in a world of hurt by the millions. So bring that back to the United States. Get rid of the government in our healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And so the next question is going to be on ethics and governance. This will be the last question that I ask, and then we'll start taking some from the audience. And so if you have some questions that have come up, go back to the table and write them down on a card, and then after this question is answered, we're going to randomly draw some out and go forward that way. So this question is going to be for Russ to start with. And what measures will you advocate for to promote transparency, accountability, and ethical conduct in Congress? And how will you work to restore public trust in government institutions and elected officials, particularly in the light of recent challenges to democratic norms and institutions?
Thank you. I think where this all starts, responsibility in government, is with our election system. In order for a republic to survive, the losers of an election have to believe that we lost fairly and squarely. We can't go back and win the 2020 election, but we have to start winning elections again. So the first thing that I would do is go back to the future, and that's go back to paper ballots and hand counts. If you look at Hugo Chavez's last election in Venezuela, I believe the number was 98.1%. Every voting machine had him winning with 98.1% of the vote, which proves that those machines can be manipulated. Again, whether there's fraud in an election or not, in order for us to trust the election process, we have to eliminate any potential for fraud. Again, paper ballots and hand counts. As far as government accountability, I mean, it's outrageous. I talk to people all day, every day about what's happening in our country, and we're losing our country. I mean, we all know that in this room. We need to scale back the size and scope of government. So we need to start eliminating agencies. I've already talked about that. Ron has talked about it. We need to scale back and cut what the government does. The government does way too much. And mostly they infringe on our 10th Amendment. So that's what I have.
Thank you, Russ. So the question goes to you, Joe.
Yes, when it comes to ethics in government, I don't know if everybody is aware that congressmen don't write legislation. They are handed legislation by lobbyists. Whoever the lobbyist, they've got all the money. They're the ones that basically paid to get us elected. Obviously, I'm not receiving any money from anybody at this point, but as far as ethics in government, well, that is a pretty important issue to me. And when it comes to ethics, well, also, we have to look at the behavior of our congresspeople. We, as the Republicans, talk about being the party of family values. Well, we have quite a few of us that don't actually behave in that manner. We talk about it, and then that is our party, but then we have so many in government that are not behaving that way, either within government, their behavior in government, or in their personal lives. So that's one of the reasons I decided to go ahead and get involved in this election, because I saw that there's too much of that going on. Not enough ethics, not enough personal responsibility, and we as Republicans claim to be the party of personal responsibility. Well, we are also the ones that need to call that out instead of allowing the Dems to be calling it out on us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. David?
I'd like to first start by applauding the Republican House of Representatives for removing George Santos. I think that's exactly what we have to do. If we don't clean our own house, how can we expect others to do it as well? So I would applaud them for that. I think I talked about it earlier when we talked about the money in the race. I think that when money is spent in this country to influence an election, it has to be disclosed. I think we've got to start with the money. And if we don't, I think we're just going to continue to see what we see, and that is large amounts of money allow people name recognition. It allows them to wine and dine those who have money, and they're using that money to, as you all know, keep people in office for long, long periods of time. And I think that you hear a lot of people kicking around the idea of term limits, 12 years. I would be very happy to sign a bill like that. I think the money that is in the election process today is I mean, Adam Frisch has $7.5 million raised for a House race in the 3rd Congressional District. That is incredible to me. I think that that's way too much money for us to have in a race like this. And I just think we have got to do something about the amount of money that we have in the race.
Thank you, David.
No, go ahead, whatever, you do it.
He did it a lot more eloquently than I did, but I agree with 100%.
I'm going to make a point of clarification off of Joe's comment. There are a lot of bills being pushed, especially on the other side of the aisle, by lobbyists. I will say my bills in the State House on election integrity on the Second Amendment were my bills. My tax credit for education choice was consultation with people who had put the bill in previously. At the state level, we have one issue per bill. I have been advocating this since 2010 at the federal level. One issue per bill, a citizen summary page that tells in layman's terms what this bill does, how much it costs, and who are the responsible parties. And every bill should have an expiration date, so that the Congress's mission ultimately is not to make more and more legislation and fund a ever larger government that we don't even know what it does anymore, because it has so many departments, so many agencies, so many underhanded ways to get money. These things have to expire. The Congress should be looking at reducing the size of government and sunsetting old bills. I believe in term limits. I wish elections would do it. Unfortunately, the people in power are not going to let that happen, so we have to look at other options for that, but that's where we need to start on that at once. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
We have allowed lobbyists and special interest groups to become the most powerful people in government. We have to start taking politics back as the people. It has turned into NASCAR. If you ever look at one of your politicians, it's like they're wearing a jacket with the patch on the back of everybody that gave them a bill, a money, or who's supporting them or who's endorsing them. We have to get away from that. We have to stop making these jobs the best job that they've ever had. We have to turn politics back into a service. And what's going on right now is we don't have anybody up there that is fighting for us. We need champions in government. We don't need people that are looking for a career. We need to get rid of the career politicians. We need to remove and create transparency, get rid of every single special interest group that is funding and buying elections. I'm telling you guys. If we want a future in this country, we have to fight back in that same way if we want transparency. And we can do it by right here. It starts in this room. Each and every single one of us. Start engaging with the people that are running for office. Start learning by who's buying them, who owns them, who's puppeting them. Because right now there should only be one person they're working for, and that's you. And that is my most important mission, is to ensure that each and every one of us in this room can speak to their congressman, to their legislator, to where their legislator doesn't only show up every 2 and 4 years. We have to get away from that. Thank you.
And that concludes the 6 questions that I had.